when I'm thinking about people to talk with in our new series of Soul Talking at soulmusic.com, and I think of not only people to talk to, but interesting subjects that we could discuss in this new feature we have at soulmusic.com. I think of things that some of our, particularly our American viewers and subscribers, might not necessarily be aware of. So the primary topic of this conversation today, with two wonderful representatives of what I'm going to be talking about, is how certain American artists have found an amazing ability to have longevity, recording careers, performing careers outside of the country in which they first recorded or were born. So this is really about how American artists have received such acclaim and longevity, in particular in the country that I'm speaking from right now, which of course is Britain. And so, of course, when I thought of all the artists who have been here and traveled here and performed here on a consistent basis, particularly in the last 10 years, two ladies of the Philadelphia International Records stable, we could say, who have also recorded for other labels, of course, and have careers before they began at Philadelphia International Records, are Miss Jean Carne and Miss Shirley Jones. So welcome, Miss Jean Carne, Miss Shirley Jones, to our special Soul Talking about artists from America and R&B and how it has actually kept you going in terms of audiences, performing, and so on. So I don't quite know, I don't have an easy starting point. So let me start like this. Let me think like this. Which of you remembers having come to Britain first to perform?
I think
And
that
if so,
must
when?
Shirley, didn't you and Brenda and Valerie come with Diana Ross in the 70s?
70s,
So
1976.
you're first. Shirley's first.
Yeah, 1976. We were
Yes,
there with Diana Ross.
right. And
Yeah.
then when did you start coming here as the Jones Girls? Not just to Britain, but to Europe, as other parts of Europe as well.
To Europe, it was 1980.
Or not too
Yeah,
far, not too long afterwards.
not too long after, but it was right after that our first album, the Jones Girls. We
Yes.
came there. Yeah, some promoters brought us in there, and we've been coming. My sisters and I were coming up until they made their transition, and I've been coming ever since. Mainly the past 10 years or so with my sister Jean.
Yes, 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 yes. So let me ask you a question. Oh, Shirley, you still there? So I was going. My question for you was: so when you first came here as the Jones Girls, and you said back in 1980, what did you expect? What did you expect audiences outside of the U.S. How did you expect them to respond at that time?
When we came there with Diana, well, I mean, the enthusiasm for her at that time, of course, she was the biggest entertainer in the world. And we just could not get over the adoration that people had for her. I mean, just falling out just at her show. But we did not expect that same type of adoration or enthusiasm for us, but it was there. And the interesting thing, and the thing that I have loved about Europe, period, is that the people there know so much about our history. They know. A lot of times I used to joke. I said the people in Europe, especially London, they know more about us than we know about us because because of the fact that back in the day, those liner notes and albums and different magazines, and they indulge in that, and they pride themselves in learning about the artists whose records they're buying and listening to, and whose concerts they're coming to. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love coming to perform in Europe, anywhere in Europe.
Yes, 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 yes. All right, so I've moved to Jean. Now, Jean, you must have come to Britain, Europe shortly after Shirley and the Jones Girls were coming to Europe with Diana. But can you recall your very first time performing in Britain? Very first time.
Whoa.
Or in Europe. I should keep saying Britain, but Europe.
Well, yeah, well, Britain was first.
Okay.
Strangely, that's the case for a lot of us artists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Britain's always first because it's like your average Brit and who's a music lover, just getting off the tube is like a musicologist, where
Yes.
their knowledge and their enthusiasm were concerned about soul music. But I think it must have been the late 70s, because I wasn't aware of a formidable audience
Yes.
in Europe until then. So I had been, I guess I had the 4 albums already at that point.
Really?
Boy, was I was taken aback
Yes.
at Shirley, at the enthusiasm and the knowledge base among the music.
Yes.
And okay, a lot of the concerts, well, the big club dates, they'll stand shoulder to shoulder and they're mouthing the words of your songs and they know them better than you do.
Yes.
Britain chooses its own singles.
Yes. Yes.
One single in the US and Great Britain will choose another single, as goes the rest of Europe.
Right.
So we still have to do that. We study the songs that Britain puts on our playlist for performances over there. And we, but anybody in the audience, you look at them because they're right there at the stage and they know those lyrics better than us.
Wow.
It's just amazing for me. I love it every time.
I was wondering, Jean, because I have a feeling, I'm not 100% sure of this, because I think I was in America when you first came to Britain, because I moved there in 75. So I wouldn't have seen your first shows here. But I have a feeling, we can check, that did you come as part of a package initially, or was it just you by yourself?
Jazz Explosion.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm
Superstars of
remembering.
Jazz Explosion, Superstars of Jazz Fusion. That package was Roy Ayers, Lonnie Liston Smith, Stanley Turrentine, Bobby Humphrey, and then we rotated various folks we invited in. Patrice Rushen was invited in, Lenny White, various other artists who worked for Associated Booking.
Yes.
And this idea,
I remember that.
this idea was created by Jody Winnick and Roy Ayers, because we were all signed to ABC, and Jody and Roy came up with this idea of a superstar band, and it's still going on.
Yeah, I got you. So now, Shirley, let me turn to you for a second. So when you first came with the Jones Girls as a recording group, in other words, this is after your first coming here with Diana Ross. Did you have any clue what the audiences would expect you to do? Did you, at that point, because we're talking about 1980, around there, not in recent times?
Well, the interesting thing is that when the promoter, I can't remember the name of the promoter, but one of the things that they told us, you're going to have to do a couple of songs that are album cuts off of your album, but they're like huge songs over here. For example, This Feeling's Killing Me. We had no idea how big that song was over there. And that was like over here, we never did the song in our show, but over there, that's the song that I have to end with because it's like an anthem over there. So but the promoters, fortunately for us, told us there were a couple of songs that we really didn't do over here in our show that they told us, you must have your band. Back in the day, they flew your entire band with you, but you must have your band learn, these couple of songs. And we did. And we were amazed at, the way the audience responded to the songs.
Now, I'm going to ask you both a question. It's kind of always intrigued me. So here you are, and I know both of you have been on shows, many shows, even in the last 10 years together here in Britain and different parts of Europe. So I have a question for you. So you come here and people go, nuts. They ask you to do songs that you don't usually do in America, songs that you've had to not learn to do, but you add to your repertoire for here. You get a different kind of response. And I imagine it must be interesting after that to go back to America where you might be considered in a particular different kind of way. In other words, people would think of you as a particular kind of artist, whereas in Britain, you just come do what people want you to do and they go crazy, so to speak. Has it been challenging at different times then to go back to America and not have the same kind of, well, just be blunt about it, the same kind of adoration and respect? Has that been a challenge for you at all? And when you immediately go back home and you start doing dates in America, it's like, oh, whoa, this is kind of like, I have to rethink that because I just left where everyone was going crazy and now it's just, okay, I'll just do my thing. But can you talk about that a little bit?
It really wasn't a letdown for me during that period because, as you mentioned, I had become part of the jazz explosion, yes, or the superstars of jazz fusion. And our audiences embraced, we had 5 headliners.
Yeah.
So, and with the concept, we ended up being on stage together for the finale, because we would peel on, and mm-hmm. I would introduce the next one, and Lonnie would introduce who came after him, mm-hmm. and then at the end, we all did expansions, right, which was Lonnie Liston Smith's song. God rest his brother, who just passed away, who sang the vocals to that, Donald Smith, to that. Expand your mind. Yeah, that. Yeah, don't you love that? Yeah, he just passed away.
Oh, yeah. Man.
So we had these vast audiences who loved us all. So we get packed houses, and standing ovations. In fact, we sold out 4 shows at Hammersmith Odeon on our first trip to London. Yeah.
So when you went back to America, it wasn't like, oh my, this is a complete different thing. It was
I
kind
think
of
because of the package that I was in at that time.
Yes.
But otherwise, it might have been a bit of a letdown.
How about you, Shirley? And with the Jones Goes at that point?
At that point, we were getting the same type of responses. I was speaking like later on once we started coming over there when things started dying down over here for what's now considered like old school R&B artists. Mm-hmm. But during the time that we came over there for the first time, we were getting pretty much the same responses over here because we were on like the Budweiser Fest, which like Jean, there were a lot of artists on there, Natalie Cole, Patti LaBelle, and it was a lot of us on there. So the audiences were going wild too, because it was, a lot of them were large stadiums. But later on, when we started, it was a letdown to have all this adoration over there and then come here and you're working like smaller clubs, smaller venues, and the audiences are more reserved. Yes,
exactly. And that was the point I was making, because I've heard many other of your colleagues say the same thing. They come here, and we're talking about in a later period of time when they would, have all these people here. It was almost like you're responding to you as if you were not as if you were, but like, in the same way they would respond to a major, I won't say Diana Ross, but I'm saying they would respond to you here in such a kind of way that you felt truly respected, appreciated here. And then I've heard other artists say they go back to America and they end up in different kinds of venues where it's not quite the same kind of response. People don't say, oh, please do this song, that you just do whatever set you do. And it's kind of like a kind of a weird, kind of juxtaposition to go from this kind of adoration experience of people appreciating you outside of your homeland, so to speak, and they go back and it's like, oh yeah, this Jones goes, oh yeah, it's Gene Carne. I'm not
Right.
saying that happened to you, but but I know artists who have told me that, and it's kind of like have to adjust mentally to the fact that where you're most respected and revered in a sense is outside of the place that you recorded, obviously
Right.
places where you performed before. So yeah,
Yes.
do you have any experience of that later on? Not so much at that time, because I know you've both been here so many times. I mean, it's amazing to me. And I just want to add one thing. I love the fact that one of the things that British and European audiences do is they don't come to see you because of your latest record. They come to see you because of your timeless classics.
And the
And I know,
body,
yeah,
your
exactly,
body of work, the whole body of
exactly,
work.
exactly.
And like Jean said, they stand up everywhere. I mean, so they're like dancing along, singing to the where it's very few places over here now. For me anyway, where the audiences are standing up. That's one of the reasons why it's probably not the same intensity
Yeah.
in the way they express their appreciation for what we're doing, because they sit down and the clubs are more reserved atmosphere.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember during the disco era over here, they stood up, and they
That's true.
danced the whole show.
Yeah.
That was fun, and that was reminiscent of what it's like in Europe for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, the clubs, they just kind of force folks to be a little more reserved, a little more,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
more mildly reactive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I was thinking about before I asked that question is, the tradition of European audiences having an appreciation for jazz, R&B, gospel, soul, actually goes back even before, even into the 40s and 50s. I mean, when you think about the artists who actually moved to Europe, because they realized that that's really where there was a different level of appreciation. I mean, we can go to Josephine Baker, we can go later on to Nina Simone, we can go to different people who actually realized, and many jazz artists, I mean, Dee Dee Bridgewater, who actually just saw that the audiences in Europe were so responsive that they decided to just come and live here. Not here in London necessarily, although some people did. Shaka Khan lived here for quite a while. So I guess what I'm saying is that tradition of appreciation for African American music actually goes back. I mean, really goes back. So you are actually continuing a tradition in a sense that really was back then. I mean, you mentioned Shirley about Diana Ross, and I can remember, when people would want to hear certain songs in a Diana Ross concert in Britain that in America they were like almost like album tracks in a sense. I mean, there's one in particular I remember called "I'm Still Waiting," which was a big hit in Britain, and I don't think it was even much of a hit in America. So there's that kind of disparity and difference. But what I'm saying is that you all are keeping that tradition of appreciation for African American music in Europe alive by virtue of constantly coming here and getting that kind of respect and look, respect is what always comes to my mind. Something you want
Yes.
to say about that, either of you?
Well, the weekenders, the soul weekenders that you guys have over there now is reminds me of the times, where over here we would have the big festivals and things, and they have weekenders. It seems like in just about every country in Europe now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
And it's a
absolutely.
wonderful tradition too.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I remember it must have been 12, 13 years ago, maybe a little longer. Um, Ralph T would do the Blackpool. I think those were the first weekenders I
oh,
recall
really?
having
Ralph's
done.
was okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure his were the first for
they're
me.
probably amongst the first. I don't know if they were the very first, but they were certainly amongst the first. Yeah, for sure, for
Okay.
sure. Yes. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm going to ask you a question which has always intrigued me, and you both have touched upon it. So, of all the parts of your repertoire that people ask for in Europe, which is the couple of songs that have most surprised you that you have had to actually I mean this respectfully, you've had to go back and learn, whichever you want to start first. Which a couple of songs you were like, they want to hear that, and then you had to kind of refresh the song in your own mind.
For me, Early Morning Love was the biggest surprise because nobody in the US probably ever even played it. I know it got no airplay. It wasn't a single. And over here, they sing it with me, and it's always shouted. If I don't include it in the song list, then they'll shout it out and we'll just do it together. Sometimes a cappella if you're not prepared. What's different for you? What do you study? Because I talked to you when you said, whoops, I got to go study. Because you're studying for the songs you got to do in Europe.
Yeah, the biggest surprise for me was "Would You Be There," which was a song we did when we were like 15 or 16 years old. Leon Ware and Curtis Mayfield did that song, and for us, when the first time I was up there singing it at the O2 after because we never did that song. It never got any airplay over here, and so I learned it. And my background singers that they had hired for me when I was there at the O2 knew the song better than I did because it was so many lyrics to the song.
Yeah.
But it came off good. But that's one of the ones that I had to study to actually learn it because we did that song when I think I was 15 or 16 years old. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah, if I'm correct, Shirley, that was on Curtom Records.
On Curtom Records, yeah, it was.
Amazing. Well, one thing I just want to say, and a couple of other things I want to say as we wind down, as they say, is I think about my own experience as a music journalist in Britain and then in America. And one of the things I know that afforded me an opportunity when I first came to live in America was that in 1975, is that because I really did study the music, when I mean study the recordings, and the thing you both alluded to, the thing you both mentioned, is that British audiences, European audiences, take this as in a sense, a serious study. This isn't like, oh, this is the latest hit. This is really about, we want to know about the deep catalog. You want to know how you came to do this, that, or the other. You know what I'm saying? It's a different kind of approach. It's, I would say, almost academic, but certainly you both said something which I've experienced many times when I would interview someone. They say, you know more about my recordings than I do, because because it was like a passion, like a study for me. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just interested in their latest hit. And I don't know why that's that way here, and it isn't quite so much in America. But I have a theory. Do you want to hear my theory?
Yeah.
I know you do. Well, it's because the music that you all do and have done is so much a part of the everyday culture of America back in the 60s, 70s. I mean, you could turn on the radio anywhere in America and you would get an R&B radio station, pretty much anywhere. So it was kind of like part of the general, everydayness of stuff. Here, we didn't have that. We never had that till much, much later. So I couldn't just turn on the radio in the 70s to the BBC and hear Jean or Shirley. So it was a special thing to us. You know what I mean? Okay. It wasn't like, do you get what I'm saying? Like it wasn't part of that. Yeah, it wasn't part of the everydayness. We had pop music here that was like that, but not R&B, soul, jazz. Right. I think that's why we became much more interested in it as a topic, because it wasn't like you could just. And also, we didn't have record shops. Like I know you both have record shops. I know for sure in wherever you lived, Detroit or Philadelphia, where you could just walk down the street and buy the latest R&B track, singles or albums. But we didn't have that. You had to find your specialist shop. So I think that's the difference. Do you have anything? What do you think? Do you think I just hit upon the theory?
I think you're absolutely right, and I've often wondered about that, and because there weren't record stores on every corner like they were here, and so many soul artists over here, because I have friends now that are like Lenny Williams. He and I have a record out together, and he has never been over. He's been over there, but nowhere near the way, Jean and I come over
Correct.
there. And he was saying that it's interesting because when he was with Tower of Power, that's when he basically, was coming over there. And I think because there weren't as many record stores, when you guys when they bought an album over there in Europe, that's why they got into the entire album, the liner notes, the entire album being so appreciative, because it was like a jewel for them. Wherein here record stores they were like on every corner back then. You
And
had
radio stations everywhere.
everywhere, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Jean, do you concur?
I totally concur. Because my father had a record company. He had a record shop. It was in the same building with his travel agency and his employment agency and his moving company and his cab company. Yeah, so
He was an entrepreneur,
right.
Jean. He was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yes. Well, I just have to say, one thing before we complete our. I think first let me say, I think people who in America who don't know the degree to which you are respected and appreciated in Europe are going to find this quite illuminating, right? Number one. But number two, one of the things, of course, that you have in common, both of you, is that you hear many of the classics that you've recorded have been for Philadelphia International Records. Now, I know you've recorded things beyond that, before that, and since then. So I want to ask you, what is it about the Philadelphia International Records recordings, that's a mouthful, that you think has particularly caught the attention and the interest and the imagination and the love of British and European soul music audiences? What is it about the Philly sound and your recordings for that label?
I'd like to think that the messages are primary. There's a message in the music. Understand
Exactly.
while you dance.
Exactly. Right.
I think those penetrate all the fluff, all the propaganda, and they just shine and rise above the fray, because people everywhere have conscience and spirits and
can
love.
relate. And right,
Exactly.
they can relate.
Yeah, everybody wants to elevate, and Gamble and Huff give you that. And
they did.
We're the vehicles.
And then too, in addition to the message that's in the music and the lyrics, is that the strings and horn sound and that thriving thumping bass line. Just every Philly song has those horns and that thumping bass line, that fullness, the richness of the music, the rhythm section, and then the strings and horns too.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes. Well, I tell you, as I'm concluding this conversation, I'm thinking about. I know you haven't asked me this question, but I'm gonna ask myself the question and then answer it. How's that? So when I think about seeing Shirley in Britain anywhere, I know that if you didn't do Nights Over Egypt, I would be very upset, and I know you do.
Oh God, I that's Nights Over Egypt is one that I absolutely have to do. Like this feeling's killing me. If I didn't do that song, they would throw the eggs or whatever they had. So that song I have to do exactly. I have to do that song what I do really. So that people can get quite a bit of it. I use that song to introduce the band and the singers that they're constantly hearing it, because I know that's one of the ones they absolutely have to hear every time I come over there. And the same here too, in the States. Really? So the same here.
Yes. So for Jean and I talked a few weeks ago, and I was telling her about the particular song. I thought that my song that I would have to hear from Jean on every performance, it has always up to now been "Don't Let It Go to Your Head." Up to now, and now be not that I'm fickle, but now I've had a chance to listen more to another song. I don't know if you still do this. I think you do. Was that all it was?
All it was. That's what I was getting ready to say.
Absolutely.
Was that all it was? I know
Absolutely.
she has to do that one. I know
Exactly.
she has to do
You know,
that.
because that was my entree into the disco world. You know, that's why I'm a former disco queen.
Right.
Thanks to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry Butler and John Ushery for that.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that wonderful song. And we didn't even know it was disco per se
Right.
until the disco started calling the label, asking for a 12-inch version of "Was It All It
Mhm.
Was."
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Well,
started there, and it's never
it keeps
ended.
going. Yes, yes. Well,
Yeah.
I promised, I'm just going to share this with our listeners and subscribers. I promised Jean and Shirley that I would make sure see if I could do this in a brief way. And I think I've done what I set out to do. And what I want to say to you both is thank you so much for bringing such great soulful music to our audiences here. I mean, it is no accident to me that you both come to Britain, to Europe on a consistent basis. Because one thing I can tell you about British audiences, I can't tell you about all the European audiences, but I can tell you about British audiences. We love authenticity. We love it when people are singing from a place that they love, that you can feel that they love what they do. And that isn't true of everybody. We know that. So I know that one of the things that has people always want to come see Shirley and Jean in Britain and Europe is because when when you truly do deliver.
Well,
Oh,
thank
thank
you, and
you.
thank you, and it's because of what you do, David. You've been keeping us relevant, and the magazines and all of that have been keeping us relevant over there. So thank you for what you do too to help keep our names and our
Yes.
music over there.
Well, thank you. Jean has temporarily disappeared, I think. Are you still there?
I'm
Oh, there you
back.
temporarily disappeared. I guess you couldn't take all that acknowledgement, right, Jean? You just had to click off.
No,
You oh no 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 no! I'm joking.
you know these electronics.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we owe you a great debt.
Yes. Thank you
David,
so
Well,
much.
we
okay.
really do. Hmm.
I don't consider it a debt, but thank you. Here's what I consider to complete our conversation. I consider that what I'm doing is what I started out doing at the very beginning of my journey in the world of soul music, which is my mission has always been to share the music I love that has touched me with others, whether it was in the form of working in a record shop, which way back in the day, or writing for Blues and Soul, or writing for whoever I wrote for. It's always been at the heart of it for me is to share music that touches me and artists who deliver music with authenticity, realness, and emotions. I'm just doing what I'm here to do, and I graciously accept your acknowledgement.
Well,
And
well,
we're
hey,
eternally grateful.
we have to do this again.
We will, we will.
Hopefully when we're over there, because we'll be
That's
over
right.
there in September
Excellent.
at Great Yarmouth. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we'll do part two, and maybe part two will be in person, and that'll be
Yes,
really fun.
that would be
That works
great.
for me.
All
Yes.
right. Well, thank you
Well,
both, ladies. You are just really great, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your time today, and thank you for bringing soul music to the world because that's what you both do.